Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Analysis. I am your host, Wasif Mahmood. The outgoing US President Joe Biden warned on Wednesday in his farewell address that an American oligarchy is taking shape in the United States, among a few wealthy people who have amassed a dangerous concentration of power. The president also took the opportunity to welcome the new administration of Donald Trump into the White House. Gabe Singer reports on this news.
Concentration of power.
President Joe Biden capped his half-century political career on Wednesday with a final Oval Office speech. In it, he warned of a nascent American oligarchy.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead.
He did not mention names, but Tesla CEO Elon Musk, the world's richest man, has not only amassed vast wealth, but also become a powerful advisor to Donald Trump, who will take over as president from Biden on Monday. Biden then invoked the 1961 farewell address of President Dwight Eisenhower, who had warned of the dangers of a, quote, military-industrial complex gaining power in the country.
6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech-industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking.
Biden's comments came after social media company Meta Platforms recently scrapped its U.S. fact-checking program and reduced curbs on discussions around contentious topics such as immigration and gender identity. Critics say the move amounted to bowing to criticism from conservatives like Trump. Biden also warned about the dangers of artificial intelligence and the need to ensure controls on what he called, quote, the most consequential technology of our time, perhaps of all time. His foreboding speech comes as his Democratic Party has little leverage in national politics. Meanwhile, Trump has nominated a slate of cabinet members who have pledged to upend traditional American alliances and governing norms.
As Joe Biden leaves office, his one-term presidency, residents of New York City, Chicago, Miami, and Atlanta reflect on the man from Delaware's legacy.
I think Biden did a phenomenal job, and I'm sorry to see him leave, and I'm really sorry that Kamala is not going to be our next president. I'll be wearing a black armband on Monday.
What was so phenomenal about his presidency? Tell us.
I think that, in terms of Biden,
yeah.
I think that a lot of things. I think that he has all the attitudes that I do about the environment, about our, but most specifically about our world position. I think that our position in NATO is stronger because of Biden. I'm frightened about what's going to happen in the future. I also think that he was right on target with regard to Ukraine.
Find legislation that he passed effective, you don't see it, you don't experience it?
I don't experience anything. I only experience the chaos, especially a big city like New York, you know. For us, average person, we want safety, jobs. That's all we care. We don't care about Ukraine.
He did do some good things with regards to unions. He tried to do a lot of other things, but in the end, it was just a mess, and he really should have just withdrawn earlier.
I think Biden's legacy would be a man of character and decency. We haven't seen a lost that. So, and our president that we're getting doesn't seem to have that. So.
I think Biden is going to be remembered for deporting people.
He's going to go down as one of the best presidents in history. And I'm going to say that from my time, too, because he's a good man, kind man, decent, believes in all people, and he gave us a chance.
I think the fact that he had the insight and the courage to choose an African-American Asian woman to be vice president was tremendous. That that set the stage, I believe, for possibilities in the near future for women in office in terms of vice presidency again, and perhaps even the presidency. I think the infrastructure bill was important. That's probably the most important thing that has happened in this 4 years. I think every administration probably since the 60s, well, no, since President Carter, really. I think every administration has struggled as it relates to civil rights pertaining to the black community. It's done well with other communities. But when it comes to the black community, I think every administration has struggled.
Yo diría que pudo haber sido mejor, mucho mejor, pero desgraciadamente no creo que haya dejado un buen legado. Entre otras cosas, evidentemente la edad lo dañó, lo afectó en cuanto a la capacidad de poder dirigir un país tan complejo como este país. El problema no es que cuán malo lo haya hecho, el problema es cuánto ha dañado con ese legado a su propio partido y a la línea demócrata. Los ha dañado, en mi opinión, por largo rato. De hecho, no creo que en estos momentos ni por mucho tengan ni tan siquiera un posible líder que pueda ascender, digamos, para enfrentarse a las propuestas de lo que trae ahora el Partido Republicano.
El señor Biden mandó muchos millones para Ucrania en vez de invertirlo aquí en Miami, por ejemplo, donde vivo yo. Esa es mi opinión.
Bueno, dejó un legado bueno porque pudieron entrar muchos emigrantes al país. ¿Me entiendes? Hay muchos problemas en otros países y entonces pudieron entrar gracias a Biden. Ese es un legado muy bueno que él dejó. Y le hizo el perdón a los muchachos de las escuelas, les perdonó mucho a los estudiantes y así sucesivamente.
On the Gaza ceasefire deal, a journalist threw an oddball question to Biden.
Thank you.
Folks, credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
The Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, Deputy Director Edward Ahmed Mitchell, had said this on this matter.
The American people have been demanding an end to this war for over a year. The polls clearly show most Americans support a ceasefire, yet President Biden refused to act on the American people's wishes. It took President Trump's election to finally shake things up between the pressure he was putting on all parties involved, President Biden's desire to stop this before he left office, and the fact that I think the Israeli government had caused all the damage they could. I think all those factors together finally got us to the point where a ceasefire deal was struck. But the big question is, will this deal hold? Will the Israeli government keep its word? And will President Trump make sure they do so?
And turning to the incoming president-elect, Donald Trump, Human Rights Watch chief says Trump's return threatens freedoms.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
Trump administration's first term showed us what they're capable of, and particularly showed their lack of commitment to human rights. But Project 2025 and the statements that we've heard from the president have already begun to demonstrate that there will be an all-out assault, essentially, on migrant rights in the United States with this talk of mass roundups. We have seen, consistently there's been support for the ongoing attacks on women's reproductive rights and LGBT rights.
We have people coming into the country or trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals.
We're going to build the wall. Mexico's going to pay for the wall. We're going to stop drugs from coming in.
But it would be a mistake for us to assume that the damage to the human rights system and to human rights as a whole will be domestic, because the tone that the US and that Trump in particular has been setting is one that is emboldening other autocrats or want-to-be autocrats around the world. We have seen Trump speak, rather positively about, the sort of strong men and the anti-rights leaders.
Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, shortly after I win the presidency, I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine settled, and it would have never happened. It would have never, ever happened if I was there. I used to talk to Putin about it. I've said it very openly. I talked to him about it. It was the apple of his eye. I said, don't do it, Vladimir. Don't do it, Vladimir.
Obviously, Trump has promised to conduct mass deportations, and that's likely to affect millions of Mexicans who live undocumented in the US, but also their families who rely on their remittances in Mexico. So it's not just that there'll be mass migrations, but these roundups will also risk putting people into detention facilities without any sort of judicial recourse, the possibility for once again seeing families separated, children being put into detention facilities are all of serious concern when we hear the sort of language and the threats of these mass roundups and mass deportations. If the Trump administration is to retreat from institutions, then this is going to be a godsend for China's ambitions to reshape the international system to its advantage. It's going to leave the road wide open for Beijing to take forward its long-standing efforts to undermine the global human rights regime, kneecap accountability mechanisms, and it will provide diplomatic cover for rights abusing regimes from Russia to Myanmar.
Our meeting last night.
2024 was not a proud moment for the outgoing administration. I think the blight on the Biden administration is most definitely going to be not only their inaction when it came to the situation of protecting civilians in Gaza, but rather that they have essentially fueled some of the crimes that have been committed by continuing to provide military assistance to the Israeli government, even as there has been mounting evidence of US weapons being used in the commission of war crimes in Gaza.
Joining us to discuss the outgoing President Joe Biden's legacy and Donald Trump 2.0 is Dr. Ian Speckard, Director, International Center for the Study of Violent Extremism. Good afternoon, Doctor.
Hello. Nice
Hello,
to
Dr.
be
Steckard.
back.
Dr. Rand, I'd like to ask you first and foremost about the outgoing President Joe Biden and his legacy, because there have been so many deaths in Gaza, there have been so many casualties of a war on what has been described as a genocide in many instances, where his hand has been at the forefront of it. What are your thoughts in regards to Joe Biden's legacy?
Well, I think if we just think about Gaza, you're right. A lot of people are calling it war crimes on the side of Israel. I think the count is now officially 40,000 civilians killed, and many put it way higher. The infrastructure is destroyed. So there's, a lot to blame. But I don't think that's a big difference between any US president. We tend to be big supporters of Israel, and our population doesn't know, they're not well informed about the details. So, it's just seen as a fight against terrorism instead of, outright attack on civilians. Indeed. So that's definitely part of his legacy, but I don't think we can expect to see a dramatic change with President Trump. In fact, we've seen President Trump send his own envoy, and the two, Biden's team worked in tandem, I think, to present a message of the U.S. Continues in its seeking a ceasefire and seeking a hostage deal, but there's strong support for Israel.
Indeed, I mean, I suppose one of the distinguishing features has been other issues that Joe Biden has taken on board, things like the environment and the climate change. Do you think that there's been a significant legacy here that's been left, or is that going to be torn up into shreds with the new presidency that's coming in? Are there any lasting changes to what we see in relation to that area?
Well, some things will change, and we do have to give President Biden his due. He worked hard on climate change. He worked hard on preserving the environment, going to clean energy, setting aside land. He also brought us out of the COVID crisis. And I think we can say that that was a disaster under former President Trump. Thankfully, we're not facing that anymore. He slashed unemployment figures, although that came alongside of dealing with the COVID crisis.
I suppose
he worked very hard on infrastructure, which is the thing that's very important when you look just inside the US. And I think I have to stress to your viewers that the average American is really concerned with what's happening here at home and less concerned with international politics. Our news is not good on international politics.
This is it, isn't it? It's a silo situation where effectively we can't see beyond the goldfish bowl effectively, and that is all we're looking at in terms of American politics sometimes. But some things do cross over, and some things are important, because the military, for example, is very important. And we know that Joe Biden used his speech as well to address something that Eisenhower addressed in terms of the military-industrial complex and now the tech-industrial complex. Those particular areas cross over so much, because we know recently the ban on TikTok has resulted in a huge uptake in RedNote, a Chinese app, in terms of almost a protest vote within the American public. How important are the areas of the military-industrial complex? What are the legacies for Biden in that area, and what can we expect with the tech-industrial complex that's coming in?
Yeah, well, we see a president that's hand in hand with Elon Musk, with X, and we see Facebook catering to the new president by getting rid of their fact-checking, which Trump hated. Yeah. Trump was kicked off of, I think he was kicked off of Twitter also, but he was kicked off of Facebook. And so we see the whole tech giants coming around him, and, you know.
And what does that mean, I suppose, for your area of expertise, I suppose, in terms of counter-extremism, the issue of tech, having tech in a certain, I suppose, the certain controls and balances that you would expect to have. For example, in the UK, we have something that's coming in called an online harms bill. What are the worries and concerns in relation to counter-extremism and violence in relation to new tech that you see in America?
Well, I think the tech giants are going to continue to bring down extremist content that is violence inciting. That's, just unquestionably promoting violence. So I'm not that worried about that. But what I'm more worried about is when violent extremist content starts to mainstream. And we saw that under President Trump's former time in office, where he was making statements that supported far right, and that a lot of it mainstreamed. I mean, we have Marjorie Taylor Greene and others that, part of the QAnon movement serving in government. So that's worrisome because, those are just outlandish, crazy claims. And if tech giants like Facebook aren't taking down content that spreads that into the mainstream, we'll just see more mainstreaming of violent extremist thinking, lies that undergird their propaganda. We'll probably see less of it in terms of militant jihadism because, the new president has, catered to the far right and used them as a base. I mean, telling the Proud Boys to stand down and to wait until his orders, sending them up to the Capitol on January 6th.
But has there been a real... I suppose one of the questions, has there been a dumbing down of this particular situation as well, in relation to how we saw a VT just read shortly before, which described Donald Trump saying they're nothing but animals and describing immigrants that were coming across to America. This kind of language of, dehumanizing people in certain ways in order to get policies across. We've seen this play out in Gaza, but we've also now been seeing it within US territories specifically now as well.
Well, both administrations had trouble with illegal immigration, and every country should try to keep its borders secure and aim for immigration to happen legally. We have a problem with we don't have enough judges. Our process is very slow, and there's just lots of loopholes that people can claim asylum and live inside the U.S. For a long time and go free. Trump has vowed to close that. Maybe he'll be able to, but his rhetoric has been horrible, speaking about immigrants that are innocent, deserve our care, and those actually seeking asylum. And, we saw what his administration did in the past, separating
with ICE,
children
for example, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So
we'll probably see those same things again. And, most immigrants and a lot of those that support them are very powerless, and, they'll be victims. So that's very sad.
What are your hopes for the future? Just very briefly, what are your hopes for this future presidency? What can we, if we were to try and put a positive point on Trump 2.0, what do you see as a positive coming out of this?
Well, the positives that I see is that he's unpredictable. He's out of the box. He does what he wants. He's self-interested. So if his self-interest aligns with the interests of the U.S., then maybe we'll get some good out of him. He vowed to end the conflict in Ukraine before he was even sworn into office. Let's see him do it. That'd be great. We do see the ceasefire now, and if the ceasefire manages to hold, thank God. And Trump did contribute to that, so we have to give him credit for that. I worry about the climate. I worry about the economy. I worry about the rise of the far right. But, maybe he'll do some good.
Indeed, or maybe Atlas may shrug, but there we don't know. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Anne Spicard. That's all we've got time for today on Analysis. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.